Welcome to JGTCR, I'm Cope, and today we are tuning the Alfa Romeo 155. Let's get into it. The 155 is a race car, so straight out of the box it handles quite well, albeit a little bit understeery. This is mostly noticeable on corner exits when pushing hard. It is a torque steer effect that runs us wide and often has us mowing the lawn. This can be regulated through throttle modulation, but it is a tedious task, and one which can impact driving at the most inopportune times. However, this is all part of mastering the 155 in factory trim, and within a few laps it is a quirk we can become accustomed to. The engine thrives in the high RPM range and is very peaky, so we must beware when going full throttle as it is very responsive. This is also the reason why we suffer from understeer issues, as the aggressive nature of the engine sending power to the front wheels causes them to spin, equating in less traction up front and by extension, steering control. Braking does leave quite a bit to be desired, as it is sloppy and takes a while to come into effect. As such, it's best to brake well before the brake markers and to hold onto the brakes a touch longer than expected. As a package, the 155 race car comes together well and is both fun and fast to drive, even with its few minor quirks. Let's head to the finish line and collect our time. (6 minutes 54.7 seconds). On to the race tune. Most of our time was spent on the front suspension. After a bit of time, we managed to tune out the understeer issue. Another key factor in detuning the understeer was the front differential. By keeping acceleration and braking sensitivity at 30 points, we give the front end enough breathing room to grip and rip through the turns. It should also be noted that the front-rear torque distribution cannot be changed. This may have been another method utilized to reduce understeer. Let's get back on track and see how this performs. When completely modified and tuned, the Alfa Romeo 155 race car does not feel that much different or faster to drive than the factory trim model, but it most certainly is. The drive and feel of the vehicle is pretty much the same as it was previously. Anything stated about the factory trim model can be repeated here and it would not be out of place. Acceleration, braking and handling have all been improved. However, the sensation of these improvements fails to be delivered. Our understeer issue, although somewhat improved, is still present. It was difficult to tune out without sacrificing other areas of our tune. We can and did make it work, but it was quite annoying to dance around the limitation cast upon us. Ultimately, it comes down to the lap time to show us the difference between factory and tuned. So let's jump ahead and see how we do. 6 minutes 35.4 seconds. On to the drift tune. Most areas of the tune sheet were tweaked to get the 155 to drift, but the most significant was the suspension toe angle, rear downforce, ballast and ballast positioning. Let's head out to Suzuka East Short Circuit for some four-wheel drive drift action. The Alfa Romeo 155 clearly has no issues getting sideways. Even though we have been limited by the fact there is no torque splitting between the front and rear wheels, we have still managed to force this vehicle to drift via other means on our tune sheet. By dialing the toe angle all the way out, we're forcing the tail to swing while turning, while the ballast up front slows the drift down and adds resistance to the rear wheels to overcome while grounding the front wheels. The end result is some good sideways action and a considerably decent drift build. The Alfa Romeo 155 is relatively simple to place on the racetrack during drift. The tail end swings out almost as reliably as any rear-wheel drive vehicle. When settled into turns, the suspension is solid and the drift is predictable. It is only when we transition or grip up that we are reminded of the four-wheel drive system propelling us forward. A firm stab of the handbrake can help us extend the drift or reinitiate, should the four-wheel drive system attempt to intervene and ruin our drift session. With the entire lap linked, it's time to switch to the helmet cam and take a look from the inside. As we mangy onto the main straight, it is important to note we are almost consistently bouncing off the rev limiter. Only when we want to transition do we allow the vehicle to breathe. This is a common theme among four-wheel drive drift vehicles as we need to keep the drift alive. Approaching turn 1, we touch the handbrake to dial in a nice solid angle. Dropping down to third and some smooth throttle modulation gets us through to turn 2. We have managed to set ourselves up nicely for the short straight and turn 3. Picking up speed, we are bouncing off limiter, feathering through the turn in fourth, dropping to third to get the snap switch. And we have settled ourselves nicely into the S-curves. We complete the remainder of the turns in third, feathering as necessary, with a touch of the handbrake to extend the drift and help us dial in the angle once again. The nose of four-wheel drift vehicles can tend to want to grip, and the handbrake is one of our key defences should this happen. It is a more forceful method to bend the car to our will, but certainly is an effective means in times of need. Rounding the final turn onto the main straight, we can be more confident and rev out the gears. And with that, our drift tune is done. The Alfa Romeo 155 is a decent race car with a few quirks. Quirks which some may find tiresome. When modified, there's not much that changes in the grand scheme of things. The 155 is actually far more interesting as a drift car, and is rather impressive in that arena considering how ordinary it was in a race setting. And that's all we have for you today, so until next time, keep racing.